All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all cryptocurrency news from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. I go by Matthew in real life and Blind Run on the internet, and today we're going to be talking about the RTX 4070 Super. Mine, unfortunately, even though I paid for expedited shipping from NVIDIA, will not arrive until Monday, which is tomorrow. So hopefully I'll get some testing of my own going on. In the meantime, we do have some numbers from hashrate.no, as well as reports on it basically not selling that well. In fact, even scalpers are not picking these units up, and they are plentiful in stock. Maybe it's an opportunity, but probably not, especially with the likes of Intel and AMD being available at much better prices, right? And especially for the amount of memory bandwidth, the hash rate you're getting at power, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Previous generation still just seems to be smashing this new generation of GPUs across the board. Even on the gaming side of things, if we start to talk about purchasing a new GPU, it makes a lot more sense to purchase a used RX 6800 XT or 6900 XT and plop that into a system and get really good competitive FPS gaming out of it. So they're just not selling. A lot of people aren't buying the type of monitors that are required either, if you think about that. We'll get into all that and more in just a little bit. We have an update on the controversial $10,000 reporting rule from the IRS and how it applies to crypto, or in this particular case, doesn't apply to crypto. We also are going to be talking about US Virginia introducing a bill to protect digital asset mining rights, which is awesome. Glad to see this happening. Maybe Virginia is someplace I need to be looking at. We're also going to be talking about the Bitcoin miner Core Scientific and their exit from the bankruptcy and their relisting of shares in the coming days. We also have a new release on Unminable, as well as a new release of BZ Miner, and we will be talking a little bit about the RTX 3050 as well. So lots of stuff to get into today. Be sure to hit that like, comment, subscribe, and notification bell down below so you're notified when I do go live. Yes, my dedicated videos are going to be taking a lot longer these days to get out because I've upped the quality. I am focused on quality over quantity these days, and part of that is also I still work a full-time day job. So really, to give you an example, BC 250s, when I did the review on that, it took about 48 hours from start to finish between testing, editing, recording, filming, all that sort of stuff before that was actually ready to go live. And we are getting our kind of test suite and our test methodology locked into place. I say we, I mean I. It's just me here. Nobody helps. It's just me. Other than the community, thanks guys for calling me out if I make mistakes. Other than that though, yeah, I'm doing all that work. So it really is going to be about a video every 2 weeks. We are currently testing the RX 7900 XTX here behind me. Very impressive numbers in some cases, not so impressive in other cases. Like I said, the 4070 Super is coming in tomorrow, so that will be relevant, as well as we have, all of the rest of these GPUs that we need to test, including 4080 Supers, 4080s, 4080 or 4060 Ti. We got all the 7600, 7700 XT, all those here as well. So lots of stuff coming to the channel. Big comparison charts, trying to get prepped so we know what the best GPU is before we end up in the next bull run. We got about a year to figure out which GPUs are going to be the king and the top of the top, and that is what I intend to do here on this channel. I definitely am going to focus more on GPU mining and move completely away from ASIC content on this channel other than reporting on it. Yes, I do have Bitcoin ASIC miners. I continue to plan on keeping myself balanced between Bitcoin ASICs as well as GPUs, but as far as this channel is concerned, I just have more fun talking about GPUs. ASICs I find quite boring. Other than maybe some, firmware flashes and new control boards, there's not a ton of stuff to talk about there. So I'll leave that to the other guys, and I'm just going to stay in my lane. And just like I think if there's CPU mining stuff, I'm going to push you guys over to Rapid Mining, all that. Speaking of which, I did this week ship out the BC250 over to Rapid Mining, so stay tuned to his channel for any updates from him on the BC250 and its CPU mining performance. I'm hoping he discovers some stuff to make them even more efficient. I do have a new sponsor today, and this sponsor in particular, I decided to allow and pick up primarily due to the fact that Scott is the one that set up the crypto mining conference that I attended in Round Rock. He also was kind enough to have me out at his ASIC repair workshop that I went to. I got to visit that, be a part of that, learn a lot of stuff about ASIC repair. So I appreciate that a lot. So he has a new build a mine, workshop coming out that covers finding electricity costs, finding locations, putting together a business plan, getting investors, all that sort of stuff. Here's the ad for it. Look, Scott's really good at setting these types of things up. So, take his free little intro course, see if it's something you're interested in. Definitely something to take a look at. Today's sponsor is Build a Mine Bootcamp. I met Scott at the crypto mining conference in Round Rock, Texas, where he assisted in helping put together that conference and visited one of his ASIC repair courses as well. I say all this to let you guys know that I am confident in my experience with Scott that he is the man to put this type of thing together successfully. In the Build a Mine Bootcamp, Scott will teach you how to avoid costly mistakes in building out your first megawatt of Bitcoin miners. You'll get a detailed roadmap and extensive planning checklists. You'll learn how to find the ideal site and get the best electricity rates. By the end of the bootcamp, Scott says you'll leave with spreadsheets, a working budget, and a design plan that you can take to your investors, contractors, team members, or whoever else you are working with to build your mine. Scott's goal is to help you do all this and get your mine built in less than 90 days. So take 30 seconds, go to www.build-a-mine.com/sun. I will have the link in the description below as well as the pinned comment. Then once you're there, click the I want to attend button and you will quickly be on your way toward mining 1 Bitcoin per month. All right, so the IRS says controversial $10,000 reporting rule doesn't currently apply to cryptocurrency in a nice turn of events from the cryptocurrency mining perspective. The two U.S. agencies announced on January 16th that controversial transaction reporting rules do not apply to digital assets, i.e. cryptocurrency. The Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, and Department of the Treasury said, quote, businesses do not have to report the receipt of digital assets the same way as they must report the receipt of cash until Treasury and IRS issues regulations. In an attached announcement, the IRS and Treasury also said, quote, this announcement provides transitional guidance and clarifies that at this time, digital assets are not required to be included when determining whether cash received in a single transaction or two or more related transactions meet the reporting threshold. The two agencies said that they intend to issue proposed regulations applying to the receipt of digital assets at a later date. This will allow the public to submit comments in writing and at a public hearing if requested. Obviously, we want to get on that as part of the cryptocurrency mining community to voice our opinions. If they even matter these days, I don't really know. The rule requires businesses to report on Form 8300 that they have received more than $10,000 in cash within 15 days of receipt. At present, the text of the rule only mentions cash and does not explicitly mention digital assets. However, a particular law, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was previously updated to consider digital assets as cash. The IRS, and dang, there's an ad, no thanks. The IRS and Treasury acknowledged that change, but said that the provision requires issuing new guidance before the change takes effect. The rule previously attracted complaints, particularly from the industry group Coin Center. Coin Center asserted that the rules began to apply to crypto transactions in early January. It also expressed concerns that the requirements could apply to entities that are not capable of compliance, such as blockchain miners, validators, and decentralized exchange users. Obviously, the reason for this is because in most cases, if you're mining, you will be having that set and then getting the payouts, and you can't really determine, depending on like how much those assets are worth when you mine them compared to when you sell them and when you report them, all that sort of stuff obviously can be a little bit more difficult. This probably also does apply to like DeFi liquidity as well as validators that are doing proof of stake. I kind of understand where that comes from. Of course, those reporting rules would be more difficult However, there is something to be said for selling every day for the amount of power you used when you're mining. And that is something that I do come into practice with, at least on the Bitcoin mining side of things, because it makes the bookkeeping a lot easier. If we move into like the speculative mining and GPU mining, especially hobbyist mining, not so much. Also, because it would be at the 10K realm, probably nothing anybody here has to actually worry about from that perspective. CoinCenter also challenged the rules in court. However, because that lawsuit has not progressed since mid-2023 and was not acknowledged by either agency today, the case seemingly did not prompt the agency's latest announcement. The postponed rules only concern extra reporting requirements that apply to large transactions. General income tax rules still apply, requiring crypto investors and transactors to report gains and losses on digital assets. Of course, you can do the 8089 in that particular case. I believe Bitcoin.tax will generate that for you. You can import all of your trading history, blah, 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 generate the 8089, and then just give that to your CPA. That's what I do. On the income side of things, if you're using a larger pool, there's usually export transactions to make it a bit easier, or utilize a specific wallet, which is probably the best case scenario if you're trying to manage reporting and so on for all of the income, and you can track what the price was at the time of that and so on, so you can pay the income part of it. Just some tidbits of tips that I've learned across, over the past few years of mining. That being said, let's move on. U.S. Virginia introduces bill to protect digital asset mining rights. This is obviously something that's been getting done across a few different states. It's nice to see more states adopting this. Come on, Texas, let's go ahead and get something going. The legislation establishes rights for digital asset miners and validators and provides tax incentives for the purchase of goods and services with cryptocurrencies. Obviously, tax incentives for the use of cryptocurrencies is awesome in this particular case. Definitely bullish on that. The Virginia State Senate has introduced legislation that delineates regulations for the mining and transaction of digital assets and their treatment under tax laws. Senator Salim, the youngest member of the legislative body at 34 years old, proposed Senate Bill number 339 on January 9th. The Senate is discussing the legislation, and if it passes, it will go to the House of Delegates for consideration and then be signed into law. The bill exempts individuals and businesses engaged in digital mining activities from obtaining money transmitter licenses. It also shields miners from discrimination by prohibiting industrial zones from banning digital asset mining or imposing more restrictive noise ordinances than those in places in industrial zones. Quote, no license under this chapter shall be required for any person engaging in home digital asset 37 mining, digital asset mining, or digital asset mining business activities, as those terms are defined in this the following section, which you can check the link in the description if you want that specific number. In addition, the legislation exempts issuers and sellers of digital assets from securities registration requirements if certain conditions are met, such the digital asset not being considered an investment contract. Quote, an issuer or seller of a digital asset shall be exempt from the securities registration requirements of this chapter if 1, the digital asset cannot be considered an investment contract, 2, the issuer or seller of the digital asset did not market the digital asset to the initial buyer as a financial investment, and 3, the issuer or seller of the digital asset takes other reasonable precautions to prevent an initial buyer from purchasing the digital asset as a financial investment. Companies offering mining or staking services cannot be classified as, quote, financial investment, end quote, under the bill. However, they must file a notice to qualify for the exemption. Furthermore, the legislative incentives to use incentivizes, there we go, the use of cryptocurrencies for everyday transactions by offering tax benefits. The bill proposes that starting from January 1st, 2024, individuals can exclude up to $200 per transaction from their net capital gains for tax purposes. This exclusion applies to gains derived from the use of digital assets for purchasing goods or services. Now, that's a particularly interesting one because, and I don't know if it's per transaction, and what that can do from the mining perspective in general, just to give you an idea, is give you a little leeway on this buy and sell times. Like trying to sell exactly when you mine it can be quite difficult, right? And there's a little bit of leniency already there, like sell the day of, record that price for the day of at the point that you sold it, blah, blah, blah. But this gives you a little bit of a bubble, at least at the home mining level, where, if you mine something, it shoots up in value and you sell it and you made $200, you still get that $200 barrier for your capital gains on the tax purposes. So that's a nice incentive to see for miners in particular, especially at home miners. So you're not actually like ending up in a position where you have a bunch of capital, like short-term capital gains, right, that you weren't planning on. I mean, most strategies in general have been that you mine it, you sell what you need for the power, and then you hold the rest until it's long-term capital gains. And if you end up in a position where you accidentally sold and got some capital gains that were short-term, you pay a higher tax bracket, just in theory, right? Talk to your CPA, and this isn't tax advice or whatever. But in general, that's kind of the idea, right? So you get a little barrier there. Interesting stuff coming from Virginia. I like this tax policy in particular, and these incentives for miners. And like I've said before, states that are incentivizing miners, I think, are going to be in a very healthy position economically here in the near future compared to states that are pushing against it. And so it's something you want to pay attention to, especially if you're considering moving away from states that are starting to perform poorly economically, right? The great exodus of California, for example. Bitcoin miner Core Scientific to exit bankruptcy and relist shares in the coming days. Crypto mining firm Core Scientific is putting an end to its 13-month restructuring journey with an emergence targeted for January 23rd. Crypto mining firm Core Scientific has been given court approval to emerge from bankruptcy and relist its Core shares on the NASDAQ, putting an end to the 13-month restructuring process. In a January 16th statement, Core Scientific said its plan for reorganization had been confirmed by the bankruptcy court for the Southern District of Texas. The firm is targeting an emergence date of January 23rd and anticipates being listed on the NASDAQ the following day. Under the terms of the Chapter 11 plan, existing shareholders will retain around 60% of the company's shares. The restructuring plan would also trim millions in debt from its balance sheet and provide full recovery to all classes of creditors. U.S. bankruptcy judge Christopher Lopez reportedly said in a hearing that the plan, quote, provides a tremendous recovery for both unsecured creditors and also equity holders, end quote. The plan is expected to preserve more than 240 jobs at the company. Now, they got rid of a lot of people. I know some of them. I chat with them on Telegram. So condolences to the people that they did lose. It's nice to hear that, 240 people are going to still continue to hold their jobs. But don't think that this didn't have, an effect on people employed within the cryptocurrency industry, because it definitely did. That cryptocurrency or crypto mining conference that I went to, it was definitely a somber place. You could tell everybody at that time, when the crash was starting to happen, was a little bit nervous about their positions and if they were going to still have a job come the next month or so, right? And a lot of them did end up losing their jobs. Hopefully, with that experience, though, they're able to move on and actually continue to work within blockchain in the future, especially as it stabilizes. Today's plan confirmation is a defining moment in our reorganization, Core Scientific said. We're poised to emerge by the end of this month as an even stronger company with highly motivated team that is aligned for success. With demand for Bitcoin and high-value compute continuing to rise, we look forward to creating value for our shareholders as we execute our growth plan, delever our balance sheet, and deliver superior efficiency at scale. Core Scientific is one of the United States' largest crypto miners, producing over 13,700 self-mined Bitcoin and 5,500 Bitcoin from co-located miners in 2023. However, a combination of a prolonged bear market, rising energy prices, increased mining difficulty, and bad debt lent to crypto firm Celsius saw the firm file for a bankruptcy in December of 2022. It had previously traded on the NASDAQ Global Select Market under the symbol CORS, but was delisted after bankruptcy proceedings began. Core Scientific said the restructuring plan has been possible due to, in part, a substantial increase in the price of Bitcoin and hash prices in the time since it filed bankruptcy in December of 2022. Now, I go into this cycle in more detail on my website at sonofatech.com if you're interested, but just a brief note about this. You should be paying attention to the halving cycle of Bitcoin at this point. I think most of you are and are aware of it, but you want to pay attention to that because this can be all prevented in the case of another bear market, right? And especially because it's very, very predictable. Like I always say, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it definitely does rhyme. You can get close enough to understanding when and how those markets will go up and down based on just the halving of Bitcoin itself. And if, larger companies like this didn't leverage themselves so heavily on miners that were going to decrease in value very rapidly, they wouldn't have been in this position in the first place. But you can also see that the recovery already is putting miners in a position to where they're able to exit this and successfully exit it. And home miners, if they held on to their equipment or purchased new equipment and capitalized on the fact that they were able to sell equipment at higher prices that was older equipment during the last bull market and then reinvest during the bear market, they're in a good position now. I mean, we are really even at the point on the GPU mining side where things are profitable over 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is really not been the case for the past year, albeit very, very low. And you still have other overhead costs. We were talking about fans earlier, but like I said, who uses fans anymore? I always remove the fan shrouds, by the way. We've talked about this, I think last week or the week before, kind of the way I remove fan shrouds and put them back in the box so that they resell better and so on. And you don't have all the dust in there and blah, 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 as long as you get server powered fans. Now, that's not good for home miners. I do get it. You want the noise low for baby mama, but if you are building out in a garage or have a higher noise barrier level or acceptance, then that's something you can consider. Let's get into the mining a little bit. We're going to touch on it and then we're going to move over to GPUs, but we do have Unminable listing ETH B3. This is pretty significant, I think, for Hypera, previously known as Ethereum, and mining with ETH B3 Hyper-based algorithm is now enabled. Hypera payouts are coming soon, and you can basically either mine something else, get paid out in Hypera, or of course the way it works, you could mine Hypera and get paid out in something else. It's just an option. Really, this is an adoption thing for Hypera, and that's the note here that you want to make. Hypera's made a lot of good shifts. One, detaching themselves from the name of Ethereum, which I think is very helpful from a perception perspective, especially moving into the bull run. That was a good move. The other thing is that they have also implemented post-Shanghai upgrades to a proof of work version, which is very bullish in and of itself as well. And then not to mention, we can't forget about it, the great change to ET hash in general, adding Blake 3 and basically getting that FPGA and ASIC resistance in there for the home GPU miners. It's looking really hot. It's my go-to for all of my dual mining, right? Like, in the winter, it gets cold. I can push more power, so on and so forth. It's always ET hash B3 and then whatever else, whether it be Carlson, Pyron, Radiant, Shawify 12256D, whatever it may be, or some speculative mine that is eventually going to move to FPGAs and ASICs. That's kind of my go-to. I really, that's where I've been at. It's nice to see it now getting more adoption. We'll have to see if more pools adopt it, that sort of thing. More miners need to adopt it as well. As far as like mining devs, there's not a lot of support. I've been testing all of these GPUs, especially on the AMD side. There's really only 2 miners that support ETH B3 on the AMD side. I believe there's a couple more on the NVIDIA side, but that adoption will come, I think, eventually, especially as we start to see it adopted more and more across the board. Now, the main topic up tonight was going to be the RTX 4070 super sales are so bad, even scalpers don't want it. This is coming from BC Games N. One graphics card maker calls sales of the new NVIDIA GPU a, quote, disaster, while retailers turn down stock of overclocked graphics cards. Gamers are reportedly not rushing out to buy the latest NVIDIA mid-range GPU, with the GeForce RTX 4070 super sales being described as a disaster by NVIDIA graphics card makers, and scalpers reportedly canceling their orders. The new GPU was was launched earlier this week for $599, adding more cores and faster clock speeds to the original 4070 specs to improve gaming performance. Now, obviously, adding more cores and all of that sort of stuff, fantastic. But we've talked about this. I don't think this is the one that the miners are going to be interested in. Because, you still want that memory performance. There's no boost in the memory performance here. All you're getting is more power pushed to the card for higher clocks and more cores. That being said, we do have a lot of core focused algorithms, but they do get overtaken by FPGAs and ASICs eventually. So is it really a smart investment if you're not getting a big bus? And that is really the question here. So it's not selling well on the gaming side of things. And then obviously on the mining side of things, it's not looking so hot either. You can read all about this new GPU in their full review if you want, where we gave it a score of 8 out of 10, they go on to say, making it one of the best graphics card options. I think really if I look at the graphics card options though, like gamers, look, here's the deal. We're in a suppressed economy right now, whether you want to, however you want to call it, right, due to inflation or whatever it may be, if we're in a recession, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is most gamers are going to be in a poorer position than they were, say, during the 2020 and 2021 period when you were getting all those stimulus checks and everything. We're paying the piper for that now. And that means most of their upgrades are moving towards buying used GPUs. And due to the fact that AMD is kind of the king of the used GPU market with the 6000 series right now, performing very, very well, even all the way up to 4K resolutions, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend $600 on a brand new GPU in the 40 line series. Now, you do get on the gaming side of things some interesting technologies that are beneficial, like ray tracing that you wouldn't get on the side of AMD, as well as DLSS 3 frame generation, but AMD did just launch FSR 3.0, which can be applied to either AMD or NVIDIA and is very competitive. And, it's kind of, you do get those things, but in reality, if you go to like twitch.tv and you look up the most played games, right, they're going to be competitive titles such as Call of Duty Warzone or Valorant or CSGO 2 or these types of games. These types of games that people are playing at nauseum, really actually spending a lot of time in, do not really benefit from ray tracing even on NVIDIA. What you really want to do is turn that ray tracing junk off for a competitive advantage, get a higher frame rate, play on a 1080p high refresh rate 24-inch screen, and be competitive in these titles. I mean, if you talk to even the top players like Shroud, which is where a lot of people get their information for purchasing their systems, this is what they're building out, right? They may have a 4090 because they're super rich, but they got a 24-inch 1080p monitor. So if you're looking at being competitive, you're probably going to look at that and say, okay, well, what gets me, over 144 frames a second at 1080p? And you're going to go that route, which is going to be the AMD 6000 series. I think at this point just makes the most sense from the gaming perspective on a budget. You get to be competitive and you get to save a little bit of dosh there. Throw in that 7850X 3D and call it a day. From the mining perspective, like I said, in this particular case, not a lot of benefit. Obviously, no benefit from DLSS 3.0. There's no benefit from ray tracing in this particular case. And you have a very shrunk down bus. I mean, you might as well buy a 4070 on the, ET hash side of things. But, there is still Capal to talk about. There certainly haven't been any of the stock shortages we've seen with some other recent NVIDIA GPU launches, and several models are still available and in stock for the $599 MSRP on retailers such as Newegg. What's more, TechTuber Moore's Law is Dead has quoted several sources in a video, which you can see below, including retailers, board partners, and even scalpers, claiming that RTX 4070 super sales have been disappointing. Quote, dude, 4070 super sales are a disaster, said one board partner, adding that, quote, frankly, we are getting fed up with being told to push models over MSRP while NVIDIA gets to sell Founders Editions from their website, end quote. Several retailers are also quoted, with one anonymous large retailer saying that sales were lower than those of the original and obscenely overpriced. GeForce RTX 4080, and that it was only the MSRP models that were selling. Another retailer said that not a single person came into the store or called about the RTX 4070 Super on launch day, while another said it had, quote, actually rejected an offer to receive 200 4070 Supers from an AIB this week, end quote. The reason given was shows a recurring theme between the response, which is that no one is interested in paying for souped up overclocked cards with loads of RGB lighting in this price range. We had a feeling it would be nearly impossible to get gamers in 2024 to buy a 12GB GPU above $600, says the retailer. Even scalpers are regretting charging their bots into online stores to inhale as many RTX 4070 Super cards as possible. It was really easy for us to buy 4070 Supers today on BestBuy.com and NVIDIA's website, says a representative of a scalper collective, but adds that we'll be canceling most of our orders after seeing the bad sales. Expect more Founders Editions to pop up soon. What's gone wrong here? Moore's Law is Dead has a theory suggesting that NVIDIA's arrogance and stubbornness has led them to fixing their card in the wrong way, and that what the RTX 4070 Super really needed was more VRAM and a cheaper price. No shit, Sherlock. And here's the other thing about that that's so interesting, is we got NVIDIA basically trying to charge, right, basically bull run prices for their GPUs in a bear market, and then pretending like crypto mining wasn't a huge part of their fucking sales in the first place. And then they cut down the VRAM, they bump up the cores and everything, they throw it on the market, and they go, why is nobody buying it? They removed the light hash rate finally because they realized this. So on the back end, they silently remove it, right? But on the front end, they're still completely just ignoring the fact that more VRAM is not only needed for high resolution gaming, right, but also needed for mining, and was a big chunk of the reason why their GPUs were worth more in the first place at all. So, I mean, Moore's Law is Dead is definitely correct here, but to add to it, if we're talking about who's buying and who's buying out cards, miners were buying out cards in that particular case, right? So it is what it is. In 2024, 12 gigabytes feels smaller than it did in 2023, he says, pointing to the RTX 4070 Super's performance falling off a cliff in Alan Wake 2 at 4K with ray tracing enabled. However, the RTX 4070 Super is designed to be a mid-range GPU for gaming at 2560 by 1440, and the GPU wouldn't be powerful enough to run this game at these settings anyway. Even with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, it still wouldn't hit a playable frame rate. The RTX 4080 only averages 32.7 FPS with these settings. At the moment, 12 gigabytes of VRAM is just about enough to cope with most of the gaming scenarios you would throw at the RTX 4070 Super, but there's not much headroom for future-proofing, and that tightness is disappointing if you spent $599 on a graphics card. There's some truth about the pricing and timing here too. It wasn't that long ago that NVIDIA 70 series cards cost under $400, and a $599 card with only 12 gigabytes of VRAM in 2024 doesn't look like a good value now. What's more, a $699 overclock card with this spec looks even worse, even if it does have DLSS 3 support and better ray tracing performance than the RX 7800 XT. Plus, people generally don't have much money to spend in January after the holidays. Also, the Founders Edition has sold out now, so some people are at least buying this new GPU. NVIDIA is launching two other super GPUs this month, the RTX 4070 Ti Super and the RTX 4080 Super, and we'll be reviewing them, is what he goes on to say. We'll be reviewing on this channel too, but a note about that in particular, I bet the 4070 Ti Super is going to sell a lot better than the 4070 Super, and that is primarily due to the fact that you have an increased bandwidth on the memory side of things, which is going to definitely increase interest in that particular GPU over the 4070 Ti. There's a reason for that one, right? there's not as much of a reason for the 4070 Super or the 4080 Super, in my humble opinion. We'll have to see with the 4080 Super as far as that goes here in the near future. I presume maybe it gets closer to the RTX 4090 performance, albeit like kind of like the 3080 Ti, but we'll really have to see. And as far as on the mining side of things, memory intensive wise, it's probably going to be right on par with the 4080 in general. NVIDIA is also just flooding the market across the board. We've had the RTX 3050 8GB release. Now in the next few weeks, we're about to have the RTX 3050 with 6GB and fewer cores and a lower TDP get launched. And, bouncing down to 6GB is not going to be that good, because it does mean that they have to cut that bandwidth from 224 gigabytes a second to 168 gigabytes a second. The only saving grace here, in my humble opinion, is that you're going to be able to buy basically a fanless version of it, which could be interesting in general, but at the price point that is probably going to release at, which is $179, you might as well go with an Intel Arc A750 at that point, which is going to get you much higher bandwidth on the memory side of things and cost you about the same price. So from the mining perspective, the RTX 3050 6GB makes very little sense at all. And even as an entry-level card, I mean, come on, just probably Intel's going to start taking over that segment with Battle Mage at some point. On the mining side of things, I get it. Intel Arc is difficult to mine with. I've really had no trouble with MMPOS in mining. And as long as you're dual mining, they seem to perform very, very well, especially in its hash to power range. The only problem is you don't have a lot of overclocking capabilities, none on the memory side of things. And so that does really force you into a position where you do need to dual mine with them. But in the dual mining scenarios for the Intel Arc A750s, they work very well and would make a lot more sense, in my humble opinion, than the RTX 3050 at that price point, because you're getting that 512 gigabits a second. It's like 508 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth on that particular model. Finally, we do have a release of BZ Miner version 19.2.4, and this one is definitely still focused on Dynex. iDoc over at BZ Miner has been really, really focusing in on a very unique perspective on mining Dynex, and it's not the greatest time, obviously, with the price going down of Dynex, but you need this type of support being done, so I'm glad to see it. He's added the proof of work ratio concept, which allows you to basically balance yourself between, doing more proof of useful work or more proof of work for a particular GPU, which then also does allow Intel GPUs to mine this, because remember, Intel GPUs don't have the FP64 support required for the proof of useful work portion of Dynex, and so it does allow them to mine it in that particular case, and it allows more options for dual mining, triple mining, just multi-mining in general. So that focus here is still here. It's really just a hot fix for 19.2.3. So they fixed an auto-tune timing out, and they fixed TBS_watchdog disabled for proof of useful only mode, and you can now set no watchdog true in the config.txt. So pretty much still just going along the lines of working on this proof of work ratio for Dynex. It'll be really interesting to play with it as they get some of the kinks worked out. I think there's a lot of kinks still with it as I've been playing with it. So it's not something that I've really wanted to do a ton of content on yet. Let me know, have you been playing with the proof of work ratio options on BZ Miner? If you have you found anything special that's working well for you? Let me know in the live chat or the comment section below. Finally, the RTX 4070 Super, just kind of going off of that, we do have numbers over on the hashrate.no. It is a profitable GPU if you wanted to pick it up, albeit, not that great. Like if we go over here, I think it still falls in even below the 7900 XTX from AMD on profitability, but it is technically profitable. It does perform well in the coins that people are kind of interested in right now, which are going to be those core intensive coins as suspected. You're going to have your Pirate hash, your Carlson hash, and so on. that type of thing that's going to be performing well, Blake 3 for Alephium, those type of coins. But the real question comes into, you know, how well does it perform in dual mining scenarios? I don't see a lot of dual mining testing that's been done. That's probably where I'm going to start my testing at, out of curiosity. When I do get it in this week, I think that's really where you probably are going to slot this card in at. But with the low memory bus, maybe it is just crank the core out on Pyron Hash and save your thermal pads on those particular units until something's more beneficial. If we go down to something like Ergo, it's 122 mega hash a second on Ergo, which means probably 60 to 70, 66 mega hash a second on Hypera. If we look at some of the overclocks that are being utilized here, the memory is being overclocked, and there was a core lock done with the power limit at 220. Yeah, I mean, you'd really want to get that power limit down to like 150, 140 if you could. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, unless it's really just sucking up that much power to hit that 66 mega hash a second, which is possible, but there's probably some tuning that definitely could be done even on the mining software side of things. Let me know, are you guys interested in the RTX 4070 Super, or is it just wait for the 4070 Super Ti, or is it buy used right now, right? Because there is, from the mining perspective, a lot of options out there for like CMP 170s, which are going to be around that $500 range, $100, you know, about the same price, excuse me, of the 4070 Super, get you way higher hash rates on the memory side of things. But the problem with those, right, they don't have a lot of CUDA cores. They're cut down on the CUDA cores. They're cut down on the core clock. So because of this kind of trend of forking Caspa, and, you know, getting in early on those core intensive algorithms with GPUs, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of oomph on the core side. It's just, where do you find that balance, right? Is it going to be in something like the 4070 Ti Super, or is it, you know, on the AMD side of things, right? Where is it lie right now? What are you guys feeling? Now, if we talk about the past 24 hours for cryptocurrency, it's been a dark one, right? The past week in general has been pretty dark. We've had a lot of pricing trend downwards. Flux had a recent pump up over 60 cents. It came back down to 59 cents. It's one of the few gainers over 5% for the past 24 hours, with Meowcoin coming in second. Meowcoin somehow is always green and red. It bounces all over the place. Ethereum fares up there. Radiant's a little green, but most of it's red, with the biggest loser being Alephium, which is definitely predictable due to the fact that Alephium just had a massive rise up. We could have called that quite easily, just because of the way that Alephium just had a meteoric rise that is expected to come down and correct itself. You can only make so many people rich before they decide to be rich in fiat. That is pretty much how this game works. And if you're not, you know, realistic about that in general, I think you're going to fail in cryptocurrency, right? The fact is like, once somebody hits a level that seems like a lot of money to them, they're going to sell. And if that level is a great portion of the volume of the coin, then it's going to push that price down. And that's just human nature. And that's how these markets work. So it's expected. I wouldn't say that means that Alephium is bad, or any of these coins that go down are bad in general. So just an idea. There are price manipulation tactics that we've seen from large mining companies like Bitmain and large FPGA miners that could be questionable, right? But that is also not necessarily the coin. In some cases, it has been organized between both, I'm sure, but it's not just the coin. It's the miners themselves as well. So there you go. I think over the past 7 days, Nexa is on top, up at 17%, with Kyla Coin coming in second at 12%, and Chlor AI up 9%, and then Dynex up 7%. Still kind of recovering in most cases, except for in the case of, I believe it was, Nexa. So There you go. Let's get into questions and answers. Remember, super chats are never required, always appreciated. First to be answered because they're the easiest to read. And don't forget, tagging @SonOfATech will highlight the message orange, thereby making it easier for me to, and I will respond to it. If you do not tag @SonOfATech, I will not respond to it more than likely. So just a heads up there. I'm going to roll the ad one more time while you guys get set up for your questions. Today's sponsor is Build a Mine Bootcamp. I met Scott at the Crypto Mining Conference in Round Rock, Texas, where he assisted in helping put together that conference and visited one of his ASIC repair courses as well. I say all this to let you guys know that I am confident in my experience with Scott that he is the man to put this type of thing together successfully. In the Build a Mine Bootcamp, Scott will teach you how to avoid costly mistakes in building out your first megawatt of Bitcoin miners. You'll get a detailed roadmap and extensive planning checklists. You'll learn how to find the ideal site and get the best electricity rates. By the end of the bootcamp, Scott says you'll leave with spreadsheets, a working budget, and a design plan that you can take to your investors, contractors, team members, or whoever else you are working with to build your mine. Scott's goal is to help you do all this and get your mine built in less than 90 days. So take 30 seconds, go to www.build-a-mine.com/son. I will have the link in the description below as well as the pinned comment. Then once you're there, click the I want to attend button and you will quickly be on your way toward mining 1 Bitcoin per month. All right, welcome back. Yeah, I guess one of the big questions I think coming up here once we hit the bull run is which GPUs do you dump and which ones do you keep? I mean, last bull run, I dumped all of the Polaris Gen GPUs. Probably going to dump all of the Navi 1. The thing is like the 5000 series is still really good. Extremely good, extremely efficient. Mines a lot of things really, really well. You can mod the BIOS still. They're easy to work on. It's most of the new GPUs aren't really cracking the 5700 XT efficiency for the most part. So I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. I think you probably will have, I mean, you're going to have a shortened lifespan of 8 gigabyte GPUs though. And that's kind of where I sit down and go, okay, well, it might be the last chance to sell off anything that's 8 gigabyte and below, right? So I think when I look at what to sell off during a proverbial next bull run, if it happens, right? When it happens, I think getting rid of all the 8 gigabyte GPUs is probably the plan. It's also hard to get rid of all the 5700s. I love my 5700s. So it's like, I'll just let them sit on the shelf though. I don't know. We'll see. If you guys don't got any questions, I'll let you go. Mav, thanks for the $2 super chat. Computer bike run. I do have one question up here from Geek of All Trades. Says, @SonOfATech, what do you see in the future of the ARC cards? A770 for the win or a big floppy bust? Well, we have Mage coming, right? And so I think Battle Mage is really going to be interesting because they are looking at increasing the amount of VRAM on those particular units. Their XE cores are really starting to catch up. And we also have people getting fed up with NVIDIA. And so if people are getting fed up with NVIDIA and at the entry level, Intel makes sense. I mean, you could see enough of an inflow into the GPUs of Intel on their side that they have enough money to actually start being competitive. I think a lot of the problem, that we run into right now is one, proprietary software for NVIDIA for gaming, specifically obviously DLSS and ray tracing, where devs are really kind of pushed into the box of developing for them, which is odd too, because, all the consoles are AMD. But for whatever reason, devs like with those, I think they just have easier tools for ray tracing and frame generation on NVIDIA. So they lean towards that realm. Whereas like, you know, AMD doesn't have that. AMD is always open. So if AMD gets a fantastic technology like FreeSync that's in like every single TV now, right? You go buy a Vizio TV, FreeSync. You go, but they opened it so everybody, you know, if you buy a FreeSync TV, your NVIDIA GPU works with it, right? Your console works with it. Everything works with the AMD technology because of its open source nature. Even right. So even Intel. So because of that, it puts them in, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to get the benefit of the AMD technology regardless. Right. So people buy the NVIDIA. It's the same reason why, you know, people buy the PlayStation and don't buy the Xbox, right? But for all intents and purposes, the Xbox Series X is more powerful than the PlayStation 5. It's a better value because if you buy it, you can do Game Pass and you get a bunch of games for basically $15 a month. It runs all third-party games faster and so on. Why do people buy the PlayStation 5? Because you have proprietary first-party games that are killer apps like The Last of Us, God of War, Final Fantasy, and so on. And so people buy those for that kind of supplementary system and for those first-party titles as opposed to buying the superior hardware. And a lot of that also translates over into the GPUs for the AMD side of things too, because when you look at the actual raw horsepower of the AMD GPUs, they're very, very, very competitive. I mean, if you look at like a 7900 XTX raw horsepower without frame generation and without ray tracing versus even a 4090, you start to go, okay, wait, hold on, half the price. And, you know, without using any frame generation, technically like the 7900 XTX is extremely impressive. Especially at like competitive frame rates, which is why I was talking about earlier. And you also get on the AMD side of things, their GPUs seem to perform better over time because they get longer support than NVIDIA GPUs. Like a 6800 XT, I would rather have one of those than an RTX 3070 right now in my gaming rig, right? But, you know, a 4090 or a 4080 versus a 7900 XTX, if I could afford either one, I'd probably want the 4090 because I get those features and I can play Cyberpunk with full ray tracing and blah, blah, blah at 4K. And the frame generation seems to work a little bit better than FSR 3.0. It's just, it's the way it all plays out. On the mining side of things though, like I said, get the used stuff. I mean, there's crazy freaking deals out there right now. I mean, like the community over at Locals, like we've been purchasing stuff for like, it's just, you can get so much hash rate for so little right now. It's insane. But you can go check out Locals if you're interested in what everybody's finding over there. But there's incredible stuff going on. Are you trying it out? Says at Son of a Tech, do you see a good future for Radiant? In the short term, yes, I definitely see a good future for Radiant. In the long term, I have some questions. Like the developers of Radiant obviously have come out and said like Alephium has really gotten to the point to where Radiant was trying to get to already with their hashing algorithm. So I think Alephium, as far as competitors, has the proverbial lead here from a tech perspective. In the short term, the reason I'm bullish on it is because of the FPGA plans and the way they move their crypto around. Radiant has a lot of volume on the FPGA mining farm side of things, so it's something to pay attention to. Martin says, at Summit Tech, I have 42 5700 XTs and was thinking if I should replace them with 6800 or higher AMD. What would you do? Like I said, moving into the next bull run, probably getting rid of all 8 GB GPUs, replacing with 16 GB or higher, right? Not because I think your DAGs are going to get to that point, but because I think that they will resell better on the secondary market. You can go buy 4K TVs for under $300 now at Best Buy, Walmart, whatever it may be, which means very soon everybody's probably going to have a 4K TV in their house. What does 4K TVs really translate to from a PC building perspective is more VRAM needed. So from a resale perspective, more memory makes more sense. And that's really what you're looking at. Mind Something says, outside of tech, who do we have to beat up to finally get proper overclocking on Intel? Well, we have pretty good overclocking on MMPOS right now, just no memory overclocking. But their core overclocking has been very, very good over there. Kevin says, outside of tech, when RXD millionaire shirts? I don't have a million, but I can make them for you. I think I only have like, I don't know, 200,000 maybe. And then that's in a lost wallet. So I can see it on the chain, but I went through a lot of crap this year and some things got left behind. Let's just put it that way. Are you trying it out? What is your take on Radiant? Well, I think we covered that like twice. And When Moon, thanks for the $2 super chat. So obviously it's going to come down to the timing, but there is the halving coming up. I would look at the halving for Radiant and I would kind of line my expectations with it up from there. Homebrew says, that's time of tech. Do you see dual gaming card rigs making a comeback like daisy chaining 23070s? Probably not. I mean, AMD technically still supports multi-GPU, but it comes down to the software. And because NVIDIA decided, our technology, basically NVIDIA was like, our multi-GPU is inferior. And because devs develop for NVIDIA, they started and NVIDIA started moving away from SLI because multi-GPU on AMD with Crossfire is far superior as far as functionality. And I think they didn't want that to be a thing because really, if you were looking at building a rig right now, you could buy and most of the games supported it. You could buy two 7900 XTXs for the price of a 4090 and smash every 4090 in existence, right? I think that was specifically a plot by NVIDIA to block that from being a point of discussion on the gaming side of things. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe, and notification bells down below. Go ahead and hit that link and sign up for how to build a mine for me, and give Scott a shout out from me over there. It's free to sign up, I think, and then he gives you all the information for when there's like an online portion that you can go to, and I believe that one's free. Don't quote me on that. Last I checked, I thought that part was free. I think it's like a 3-hour kind of introductory thing that is like a group thing, which you can meet some people there, which is probably worth it. And then he has his in-person, like week-long, whatever course that you can go check out from there. So huge shout out to Scott. Just want to support him. Hopefully, I think you said he was getting out of the events game. I kind of hope he gets back into it. I'd like to go to more conferences, but maybe we just need to get one set up for ourselves. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Be sure to see me next Tuesday. Oh, I mined with the bear shirt.